Greetings and welcome to Live from Caid. Tonight's special guest is the Society Officer of Diversity, Equity and Inclusion, Lady Astridr Ymirsdottir, called Zahra, and featuring a live performance by Baroness Briana MacCabe. Me, I'm your announcer, Master Bjorn of the Northern Sea. And here's your host, Master Laertes McBride.
Well, good evening, everyone. Greetings, and I hope you're having a good night. I hope your week went well. We have a very informative show. It should be lots of fun. And I appreciate y'all tuning in tonight. Before we get started, let's do a couple of the little housekeeping things for the viewers here in Caid. As was announced last Friday, unfortunately, Great Western War for this year has been postponed. So everything's moving to 2021. I know the decision was not reached easily, and it was done, as you can see in some of the posts that were done, with a lot of thought towards what is best for the kingdom and the people that are working it, and of course, anyone that would attend. Next up, Virtual Patrol War is this weekend, this Saturday and Sunday. Be sure to go to the Kingdom website for the details, and they will, as part of Virtual Patrol War, is the Caid Online Court. That's this Sunday at 4 p.m. Later this week, there'll be a post with the Zoom information. So for everyone that wants to join in and see court, you'll be able to just keep an eye out on the Kingdom Facebook group page for that information to be posted. And then coming up next month is the Virtual Collegium on Saturday, June 13th. Again, check out the Kingdom website. There's more information there. So before we get started on anything else, it is now time for me to bring in my dear friend, Bjorn. So Bjorn, just one moment, please. And hi, Bjorn.
Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm good. How are you today?
I think I've finally managed to reach Zen quarantine. I have gotten the ability to expand both my mind and my waistline.
Oh, that's nice. Well, it's good to have goals.
These were not the goals I had intended on originally, but a lot of baking is going on.
Oh, that's right. We've been doing baking around the house here too. So one of the things I want to talk about, last week we talked about all the dance and glow videos that Kingdoms have been putting out. And Avicol put one out, a dance video. Did you see it?
I did, and I'm very pleased to announce that my own apprentice, Countess Karina, and her son, Donovan, were in that one, and they did me proud. The whole Kingdom of Avocado is just a great group of folks, and it was a very, very fun video to watch.
I thought it was very well done. And of course, I noticed once again, lots of puppets. So
once again, puppets. Yeah, I know that puppetry and marionettes are a period art form. I just never realized until we started doing the sheltering in place how prevalent they are in our videos.
I know. When I first started out fencing on Stewart, there was a gentleman who would fight in his offhand secondary.
Yeah, right? I remember that. Yeah.
And he would get out there. There's the camera. He'd get out there with his puppet and just be talking to you the whole time. And if you were a newer fighter, you would strike up a conversation with the puppet. And of course, he would stab you. But afterwards, you kind of learn to ignore the puppet and just fight the guy. So it pretty much reminds me of fighting Master Colwyn. So
that is true.
It's true. But anyway, hi, Colwyn. So I know that you have a couple of ANS websites that you'd like to highlight this week. So
I do, yes.
What you got?
Well, we've been trying to sort of branch out and look at things that are sort of outside of my own personal wheelhouse. But this week, I decided, since last week it was all about me performing, this time it's all about me for websites. And so the first one we're going to look at is the Choral Public Domain Library website. And this is probably the website for free choral selections in public domain. If you have a choral group or a small ensemble and you would like to look up, search by composer, voicing, musical era, sacred or secular, this is really the website to go to, because these are all public domain, and They have several different formats. You can look at things in PDF, or you can also listen to some of them in MP3 files or WAV files. Some of them are also placed in there by like Finale or other music programs, to where you can actually alter them once you've downloaded them, and you could like change the key or do other things depending upon the that particular selection. So it is really for choirs or chorales, master groups within the SCA and elsewhere. It's really one of the definitive public access websites for choral music.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm very, very fond of it myself. That's one of those that if you don't have a lot of bookmarks and you do music, that should be one of them. The second one is, see if you can guess what this one's about. It's medieval cookery. So it's probably about medieval cookery. This is an excellent starting reference, medievalcookery.com. It has both original recipes and redactions. If you need to have an anchor before spelunking down a particular culinary rabbit hole, this one is definitely an excellent website to start with. Its indexed cookbooks are by region, by time period, and it is one that I think, one that really, if you are starting to think to yourself, I would like to look at some original sources, and maybe I'm not quite ready to look at them as a period reference and just try and redact it myself, this is an excellent place to go to, where some of the redactions have been made for you, and you can try your hand at some of those period recipes. And I think it is an excellent resource for novice people in medieval cookery and seasoned, no pun intended, veterans alike.
Seasoned, love it.
Maybe slightly pun intended.
Yeah, very nice. Well, we weren't assaulted by it.
We're here all week, or who knows? We're here all.
Hey, you get what you pay for, right?
True.
So let's talk about who our guest is coming up tonight. So I think we have a guest from the Middle Kingdom tonight.
We do indeed. Now, this is really neat, because something has occurred between the time that we actually spoke with her first and when she is joining us, and that is that Lady Astridr Ymirsdottir, as she is working on resubmitting a different name. She'll still have the one before, but she's going to be known as Zahra, and she will be now Her Excellency. She was given a court barony recently. So we will be having a Baroness Zahra, who is the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer for the Society.
Oh, great. So, Bjorn, I will do our typical thing of saying goodbye. Goodbye. You'll still be here listening, though. And let's bring our guest in. And here she comes right now. Hi. Oh, and you know what? My sticky note where I said unmute, I didn't unmute. So now I have. Now you're back.
Hi.
All right, thank you for joining us tonight. I'm so glad
you're having me.
I know it's a little bit later on your side than it is for our side. So, but yeah, I thought it would be a grand opportunity. We reached out when we first started doing this to ask who people were interested in hearing from. And your office was one of the ones that came up several times, just to kind of get a feeling for what the office is, what your goals are, how it works within the overall society. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, people do all the time, but you're a corporate officer, not a society officer. Is that how that works?
I am a corporate officer. We currently don't have a society officer, so the few roles that a society officer would take on, I end up doing both. Because we don't have grader officers for DEI, so there's not a need for a society officer yet.
Right, so you're kind of put in place to help build it up, build the guidelines, the structure, how things can be rolled out across kingdoms and the society level, right? So with that, what is the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion?
So we are effectively education and advising. So I'm helping to create classes, training for some of the other offices. I'm helping to advise on some of the things in our governing docs that might need to be updated or expounded upon a little bit more. We are really kind of building the plane as we fly it, as we see where I can be most useful, what areas we're needing the most kind of help in, and I'm also trying to get things going on the kingdom level so that kingdoms can weigh in and say, hey, this is where our priorities are, and this is what we feel like we need.
So what are the goals of the office or the structures that you're building? The diversity, equity, and inclusion is very broad. So
right.
what really is what are y'all trying to do?
Right. So I believe that diversity is the outcome of an equitable and inclusive society, right? I don't think it's a quota. We're not going to ride around snatching in marginalized groups and going, we need like 3 of you, so get on in here. What we really want to do is we want to look at our society and we want to make sure that people from the outside can look in and see a space for themselves, and that we are being welcoming and being inclusive in our policies, and we are expecting them rather than reacting to them coming in and saying, oh, there's not really a place for me here. And sometimes that can look like social situations, but sometimes that can be as easily addressed as like looking at our sites and being able to talk about the accessibility, the width of the doorway, right? The steepness of stairs. So really making sure that everyone can make it to an event, can evaluate for themselves whether or not the SCA is the right place for them.
Right. So it's more having open arms and embracing people. It's not like a disciplinary position where you're saying what happens if you don't do it, right?
I am not investigatory at all.
Right.
When people come to me with problems, I can help advise them on how best to talk to the seneschalate, but the seneschalate is still the entirety of the investigatory and discipline branch. I have nothing to do with that.
Right. Now, have you issued some guidelines or guidance or anything while you've been in this office, or that kind of started things rolling?
Yeah. So the bullying and harassment policy was updated recently with some changes that I'd suggested. We also are going to be rolling out a sexual misconduct policy that Gigi, my ombudsman and the woman who first was in this position, wrote and got together for us. And right now I've got 4 classes that I teach. I've taught at the Seneschal Symposium, which is to all of the various kingdom seneschals. So we're starting the outreach with the education stuff. It's been about 6 months. But of course, the pandemic has affected some of the plans there.
Right. Now, speaking of the pandemic, have you thought of perhaps offering these classes online or virtual type of discussions so we can just keep your work moving forward, even though we're a little bit not as active as we should be?
Absolutely. I've had 1 roundtable and 2 classes that I've taught online so far. I'm teaching another one this Friday, and I'll be teaching all of them again at different time slots so that people across the known world can get to them a little bit more easily. We also have recordings of them available. So
where would we find out about your schedule or where we could find the recordings? Is it on the sca.org or where's that information published?
When I have the classes, I tend to roll that out through our SCA Facebook page with the info, and so you'll see that go by. If people also want to look me up on Facebook, I can post about it. I do post about it to my page publicly, and so they can see it on my page or on the SCA Facebook page.
Right, and people could put comments and below this show and reaching out with questions and stuff, and you can just check out and see like that. So let's do a little role play thing. So I know trying to make it inclusive and respectful of people, but not make it restrictive, where any type of relationship or conversations that you could have with your friends aren't accepted. It's kind of that balancing act, right? So, I'm rather tall, so you can't tell because we're all sitting down. And there's a good friend of mine who's height challenged. And every now and then I'll make short jokes to him at his expense because he deserves them. And, it's fine with us, but would this be something if people outside that aren't familiar with our relationship, would it be a concern, or it's just one of those things, or how would that be?
So that's a good example of something that is a little bit dependent on like the people around you and his comfort, right? I too am 5'2", so I am also way down here. I don't mind. I make the jokes all the time. I guess the questions I would ask for him would be, are those things that he would be comfortable with complete strangers overhearing and then repeating? And if the answer is yes, no worries. But if the answer is no, then that would be something that, in the spirit of, making sure that he feels like he's in a safe place, you guys would probably keep those kinds of jokes between yourself. And you would ask, hey, maybe in private spaces. So it's really not about the idea that you can't make, slightly off color jokes with people who are comfortable. The idea is you want to be aware of their comfort. You want to be aware of your audience's comfort, because, the people around you are going to overhear and they're going to make their own assumptions. And if those assumptions can be straightened out with a, hey, everything is cool, no problem. But if people are going to start to wonder, ooh, is that something that I need to worry about? That's where we start to kind of think about it from a more inclusive perspective.
Okay. So it starts with the people involved in the conversation, but you have to be aware of the people that are around, that it's taken in the correct way. Right. Okay. And what in your professional background lends yourself to being in this position in the society?
So while I have been in the SCA for relatively short compared to basically everyone else, I've worked in writing for education. I've worked in policy and public spaces, and so rhetoric and public spaces, documents for governments and whatnot. I've also spent a lot of time kind of refining what it looks like to be truly inclusive. I'm a person of color, if that's not extremely apparent. And so that experience has played into my priorities as I've moved through the world as a person of color. And so really figuring out, what things truly made me feel unwelcome, what things are maybe going too far, what things have been overblown online, or what things have not been addressed enough. I mean, it's a fine line often, but hopefully if we can get things in place where people feel comfortable communicating well about it, there won't be as much, churning below the surface.
Nice. Okay. Now, this is the point I usually call to my friend Bjorn to see if he has anything he would like to ask you. So, Bjorn, do you have any questions?
I do. One of the first ones is, since you had said that you are a corporate officer and that there is no necessarily societal companion to that would then assume that there is not yet a greater officer for that function. How would kingdoms themselves get involved in diversity, equity, inclusion? Is this something that would be put into kingdom law? Is this something that would just be done in sort of a, let's have a discussion and see where we are? Or is it more of a change that is dependent upon kingdom culture, or some kind of combination of the above?
So because there's not a society officer, there's not a greater officer in the sense that chatelaines report up through their greater officer. You can still have an officer for diversity, equity, and inclusion. You can have a deputy to the seneschal for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then those officers would report up through their seneschal. And then they would CC me on reports. Right now, we have 11 of the 20 kingdoms who have someone at the kingdom level, a dedicated deputy or officer, or even in one case, an entire council, to advise and roll out education on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So that's one way. I highly recommend that way, because that also gives me someone to interface with directly, and I can keep them updated about what's going on at my level. And so that's always really useful. Otherwise, holding classes are great. I have classes and class materials that I'm happy to give to folks who are interested in holding them. Attending classes is great. I teach. I know a lot of the other Kingdom DEI folks teach as well. So that's always a great option. Some of the initiatives that people have taken on are things like combing through their governing documents for gender exclusive language. looking at their own events and learning how to talk about the sites in a way that lets them deal with accessibility information in a way that the populace can use. So being able to say, hey, this site has these accommodations. You may have trouble with these things on this site. So there's really a variety of ways that people can choose to engage. And if people want to learn more about what might work best for their specific kingdom, because it will be different across every kingdom, I'm always open to having that conversation. You just email me, call me. I'm happy to chat about it whenever.
Excellent, thank you. The second question that I have is that this is not meant to be a gotcha question, but did DEI have any input in the upcoming SCA census? If so, what were they? And if not, are there any things that you would like to see on any subsequent surveys that talk about the society at large?
DEI did have input. This survey has gone back to my predecessor, Giada. And so she put in her opinion of what demographic questions would be useful. I submitted demographic questions. I solicited questions from the different kingdom DEI officers, deputies, etc., and rolled all those questions up through. And then the census committee went through and they chose several different demographic questions that would be useful for giving us the information we need to best serve the populace. So there will be various DEI related questions on the census.
Excellent, thank you so much. The final question, this is certainly this is more of a Caid specific, although I do know that this is something that is asked about elsewhere. Here in Caid, we're very fortunate to have a few very dedicated silent heralds, people that will sign for those that need it. And they were asking if what they do as a silent herald is something that would be under your jurisdiction. Are those guidelines to be sort of shared between DEI and the heraldry office, or is that something that we really haven't put into place as of yet?
Because it's so new, I think it's staying under heraldry for now. I do think that there is obviously a place in the DEI space for it, but right now we have not talked about changing the guidelines to be directly under DEI. But I am also happy to help. So if folks are wanting to facilitate conversations about silent heraldry, I will do what I can, because I think that definitely falls under the auspice of diversity, equity, and inclusion.
I really appreciate it. I know there's many other questions, and there's a lot of people that have been making comments, but I also know that your time is very precious. So if you don't mind, I'm going to go ahead and throw these things back to Laertes. But I just wanted to say thank you so much, Your Excellency. And once again, congratulations on your most recent betrothal. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
I know, congratulations. And that's a separate story for a different time. We do have one question from the viewers, is how does cultural appropriation fit into this picture?
So cultural appropriation is something that I've been interested in since before I held this position. It's a very complex topic. I teach a class on it. It's not as zesty as everyone thinks it is. What it basically boils down to is a question of respect, right? Are you respectfully portraying a culture? I can't answer for people whether or not what they're doing is cultural appropriation. There are very few hardline rules. One of them is no blackface. But other than that, people really can use the class to self-evaluate and say, hey, if I was approached by a person of this culture, would I be able to explain what I was doing? Can I trace back any symbolism used? Am I overstepping into any potentially dangerous religious segments of what I'm doing? Is this representation as faithful as I can make it without stepping over any lines? Like I said, it's a very complex topic. There's very few straight answers.
Right.
So it's an interesting thing. I want to encourage people to continue to explore persona diversity in the SCA. So I developed the class as kind of a vehicle for giving people information, about what is and isn't cultural appropriation. It's not as broad a definition as people tend to think it is. Everything we do in the SCA is not cultural appropriation. What we mostly do is better categorized as appreciation, and cultural appropriation is better termed as misappropriation. So perpetuating false narratives and bad stereotypes about cultures. But that's a big question. I have a class. I am happy to put that out there and continue to have that discussion there.
That's awesome. So we've used a lot of your time up tonight. So as we tend to do with our guests, is we like to have a little trivia question afterwards, like relevant or not. So hey, Bjorn, what's this one called?
The Society for Creative Acronyms.
That's right. So you're the DEI officer, which is much better than being the DIE officer, right? Right. So I'm glad they put it in that order. So I just want to see with the other acronyms that are within the society, if you just kind of know who they are. It's easy. You'll be fine. So we'll start off easy. So you have the BOD. What's BOD stand for?
Board of Directors.
See, I told you. Next up is TI. Do you know what TI is? Oh, we have the editor that lives out in Caid, and they're going to get mad.
Oh, I don't know.
It's Tournaments Illuminated. It's our
Illuminated.
Okay, so here's YAFA.
Oh, that's the youth one. I don't know what it stands for. It's the youth one.
You got the Y. It's the
family.
Oh, you got 3 of them. Last one is Achievement. Youth and Family Achievement. Awesome program, by the way, for the kids.
Yeah.
We'll do this one.
Minister of Arts and Sciences.
Yes. MOAS? 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 I don't know.
Sure.
And here's a tough one. used to be an R at the end. Now it's an F, by the way.
No. I don't know.
Deputy Society Marshal for Fencing. It used to be Deputy Society Marshal for Rapier. So, see, you did. You did okay. But you know what? I'm absolutely being honest. This was fascinating talking with you today to learn what the society is undertaking under your stewardship and guidance, working directly with the Office of the President, and John, who was on here a couple of weeks ago, and knowing that you're making yourself available to the interested parties. You're teaching classes, you're going online to teach it, you're sharing the knowledge, providing the guidance, and helping us be seen more with open arms and welcoming everyone. I think that's a very laudable position to be in. And just me personally, I'd like to thank you for the time you put in for it, especially being in 4 years. I mean, it's like we were talking earlier. I think your goal is just to burn out early. But I think it's fascinating. I really appreciated your time today. And thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And it's not me, it's everyone else just continuing to be awesome and inclusive and willing to learn.
All right. Well, stay healthy out there in the mid realm, and hopefully we'll cross paths.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. You have a good evening. Okay.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Well, let's bring back Bjorn. Hey, Bjorn.
Hey there.
That was great. Oh my gosh.
That really was.
I feel like I actually learned something.
Yes, and I have to say though, it is kind of funny when we are around what I would typify as normal-sized humans. They're not really tiny. I mean, they're not really short. We're just mutants. I mean, that's all there is to it. So
I know.
We're not from here. Where we're from, it's called corn-fed aged beef, I think is the technical term. So although you could stand to put a little extra on, I'm just saying.
Yeah, family show. I'm not going to talk about the aged beef. So next up, let's talk about our bard that we're having perform this evening.
Oh my goodness, we are very fortunate to have with us Her Excellency of Altavia, Baroness Briana MacCabe. She is a lovely performer, a very fine singer, and someone who I enjoy listening to all the time. And so she has graciously offered to share her talents with us this evening.
All right, well, let's bring her on. Again, we'll put you away in the ethereal world, and let's bring Her Excellency in. Here she comes right now. Hi, Your Excellency. Oh, you know what? I did it again. Look, I put a note that said unmute right here. I never got to do it. Oh, anyway, good evening.
Good evening.
Oh, I don't have you muted right now. I can.
Oh,
there you are.
am I muted?
Hold on. I'm showing you delayed for just a moment. Let me send you away and bring you back. Let's try that again. Bring her back in. Now let's try it.
Now?
Oh, yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Good evening, everyone.
Hi, let's try this. So, how are you doing, Your Excellency?
I'm doing very well. Thank you.
And how was, I know you were on the very first episode that we did, and I appreciate that, but here we're going to highlight your bardic skills that you've been honing over the years. And so you were a finalist for the Bard of Caid competition this past year, is that correct?
Yes, first time entered and I made it to the finals.
Congratulations. That was a very formidable group of folks, and I enjoyed getting a chance to hear the various formats, and so I liked listening to your work quite a great deal.
Thank you. It was great getting to perform with Fenella and with Selenius. They're very great performers.
So if I may ask, what is it that you will be doing for us this evening?
Well, oddly enough that you mentioned that performance from Coronation, because I'm going to perform the piece that I wrote for their majesties, for their coronation and for the competition. It's called The Strength of Caid. The tune is Pastime with Good Company, which I used because it was supposedly written by Henry VIII, another monarch with a very large personality that has a bardic flair. Reminded me very much of Alexander. So
I'm not going to comment. And on that note, Your Excellency, you have the stage.
thank you. Fighting with good company, he loves and shall until he dies. With mirth and strength he leads the fray, inspiring those he fights besides. For the sword of our king is both sharp and keen, reflected in the might of his people. His love of this land is the heart of his dream, increasing the strength of Caid. A queen of love and beauty, inspiring art where she goes. Artisans both far and wide pay homage to Caid's fair rose. For the beauty of our queen is a light so bright and clean, reflected in the art of her people. Her love of this land is the heart of her dream, guiding the strength of Caid. Service to these crescent lands is the heart of the horseman's creed, accepting all then raising up. That's the way they're taught to lead. For the house of the king has very broad wings, reflected in their service to his people. Their love of this land is the heart of their dream, providing the strength of Caid. Rejoice, good gentles, for our crowns, in whose love believe we can. May their reign bring great joy to every child, woman, and man. For the laugh of the king and the smile of the queen reflects their love of their people. This love of Caid is the heart of the dream, and that is the strength of Caid. Free Faiza.
Well, thank you very much, Your Excellency. That was wonderful. Really appreciate you coming in and sharing your talents with everyone. That was great.
Thank you very
Yay for
much.
Contrafacta.
Well, you have a great evening, Your Excellency. I believe you're getting ready to go over and host a after party over on Zoom.
Yes, maybe with a quick costume change, and yes, I will be hosting that.
Well, it's like a
So
Stevie Nicks
everybody's
concert.
welcome to come join us.
All righty. Well, thank you very much, Your Excellency. You have a great evening. Oh, look, we're flipped. This is so weird.
We are. This is so.
Hold on. We're going to do something. Because I don't know where to look if he's not on this side of it. So,
Yeah, exactly. Like this. That's how it should be.
What an enjoyable show. I truly enjoyed it this evening. Felt like I learned a lot. And of course, Her Excellency, performances are so much fun. So we just want to talk about what's coming up this weekend. We will be once again having a Caid May online court pre-show. We'll put it big. It's going to be this Sunday at 3 o'clock, probably till about 3:45. Online court will be starting at 4 o'clock. So we will have several different guests I have lined up as our special guest co-host. We're going to have Master Giles and Monsieur
Giuseppe.
I saw something pop up over here on the comments. I'm like, totally took me out of the moment. Along with some words from their excellencies for the anniversaries that have been postponed for the year. And then much like we had words of inspiration from Ladies of the Rose last month, I have a very special segment that you will see that you have to tune in and see. I think you'll be blown away by what we're going to have in celebration of Patrol War. So you got to tune in. So be sure to tune in. And then, Bjorn, we were talking later in June that we have some really amazing people that are going to come in to share hopefully as much information as we got tonight. But I don't want to ruin it yet. Be sure to tune in for the online pre-show for the court. Man, I said that horribly. Let's try that again. Be sure to tune in Sunday for the court online pre-show, and we'll talk about what's coming up in June.
That's right, 3 p.m. Pacific. Also want to remind you, even though court is happening, even if you don't get things in right now, still remember, send in those award letter recommendations. You see people doing good things. You have seen people do good things prior to the COVID lockdown. Make sure that you let your monarchs, the barons and baronesses know about what wonderful things people are doing in your area or in your kingdom. Because if you don't let that information out, it possibly might not have been seen, and it always helps.
Right. Well, thank you again, my friend, for joining us this week. I look forward to this Sunday. And hey, everyone, thanks for watching. Join us on Sunday when we'll be back. And once again, we'll be live from Caid. We'll see you then. Thank you.